Xaku needs some help. He did not release in a very strong state whatsoever. His abilities feel weak and sometimes even a hindrance to himself. They're kind of all over the place in what they do, so they don't really give Xaku a role on his team. I know there's already a dev workshop out with the first round of buffs coming for Xaku, but I don't feel like the changes will be enough. I know there's going to be another round, but that's kind of what the point of this video is. I wanted to make this video earlier, but I found out that this first wave was coming, first wave of buffs. So I wanted to wait and see what those would be before I made a video, but unfortunately, this needs to happen. Right now, Xaku has no identity other than the void damage frame or the broken frame. His best use is for stripping armor, but even that is limited in its use. Other than that, he does have other tools that can push him into a sort of debuffer style role, keeping enemies off his team and making them easier to kill, so that's the direction I would like to take Xaku. Let's just start with his passive. I understand the reason behind the dodge chance, with the skeleton being harder to shoot and all that, but it's a bit of an stat for a passive, and just adding some damage reduction to splash damage is just kind of adding clutter as a band-aid. I would just allow Xaku a chance to completely negate damage, be it bullets, explosions, melee, or whatever. Heck, even allow him to avoid a single proc of damage over time status, such as slash and heat. If you need an explanation, the void is a mysterious power. Now let's get into some of the bigger issues that Xaku's got, starting with Xata's Whisper. Xata's Whisper itself, I don't have an issue with. It's when you start talking about the void damage and status that the biggest issues lie. The good change that they are doing is they're making void damage completely neutral to all armor types. The issue still is with the status that void does. What it does is creates this big magnetized bubble that forces body shots. So if I were aiming at the head, it doesn't matter. I'm going to get body shots. This actually reduces your damage. You would be able to deal more damage by just not using the ability. I have actually tested this, and it's really, really annoying. In fact, on a couple of my Xaku loadouts, I've put Rhino's Roar instead, because it's just a better damage amplifier. So what I propose we do is, instead of body shots, we just force headshots. Now, I get that that might be a bit too strong, especially with some weapon loadouts. So my proposal is that since void damage doesn't have a stacking option for status, just have the bubbles start small and get bigger and bigger and bigger with more void stacks that you put on it. That would help out operators quite a bit too in actually having synergy with their warframes, because you would be able to just get free headshots just by going to your operator and shooting a grenadier a few times if you really needed it. Let's move on to Grasp of Loke. I know that there's some upcoming changes to allow this ability to be recasted, and I do greatly appreciate that, but I don't think that's going to be enough to fix this ability. This skill severely lacks range, usable range. Right now, when you cast it, it only casts in a small area around Xaku. It feels like a melee ability for a frame that probably shouldn't be in melee range. My proposal is to instead be a point and click skill. So say I point and click in this area, and then it'll grab weapons from these enemies, and then I get two void entities that hopefully will have a decent enough range to shoot at these guys. That's another issue. The guns that you steal from enemies, they don't have a lot of range. Like, they're guns. You would want to shoot from a distance, yes? They, again, feel like a melee weapon for something that shouldn't be in melee range. I think this alone would be a huge buff for this ability. Now onto the Lost. I want to talk about the Lost itself, but really quick, I just want to very quickly run down Accuse, Deny, and Gaze. So Accuse, the issue with this skill is that it's just got minion syndrome, where it's one of those abilities that you cast it, And yeah, you have all these enemies that aren't attacking you anymore, but then your teammates just wipe them out. And then another issue with this is for some reason, even if you only have one enemy affected by a Q's, you cannot recast it. And for some reason, I don't think that's in the changes coming for Xaku. That would be a huge help. And on to Deny, I don't like that they're forcing synergy between Grasp of Loke and Deny, where if you have more guns disarmed and in your arsenal, then Deny will deal more damage. If Deny is not dealing enough damage, then Deny needs to be buffed. Don't add a band-aid by tacking another ability onto this. I would rather that Deny just deal a percentage of an enemy's current health. And then Gaze, when I talk about the loss as a whole, you will see why I don't want to touch Gaze. It's already a good ability, and what I plan on doing is going to make it really, really good. If anything, I feel like with what I want to do, Gaze will probably have to get nerfed. Alright, now let's actually talk about the Lost as a whole. The issue with this ability is, yes, it's supposed to feel like three completely separate abilities, but I feel like if they're going to be tied on the same button, that they need to be coherent in some fashion. So I have an idea, and it might be a little strong, but it's just an idea. So I have 3 Grineer here, and I have their health bars indicated by armor. So let's say I hit this guy in the back with Gaze, and he gets all tied up. So now he's going to lose all of his armor. And just for the sake of this example, pretend that Gaze has no area of effect on it. These guys are not affected by it. So now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cast Accuse on all 3 of them. So now it's going to be all weird looking. They're going to be my minions, whatever. But now, since this guy is affected by Accuse as well as them, and this one's affected by Gaze, these guys are also going to be affected by Gaze. So they're going to lose their armor as well. Okay, so now, let's say I shoot this first one in front with Deny. I hit them with this weird arrow-like void beam, and he takes damage. Well, these guys are also all affected by Accuse, so they're connected as well. So when he takes damage, they are also going to take damage. And then when this one enemy gets lifted, we'll just indicate by some little lines, I guess. When he gets lifted, these guys are also going to be under the lift effect. So the idea is that when enemies are affected by the different forms of the Lost is connected and will affect other enemies affected by other parts of the Lost. Alright, and now onto the Vast Untime. I want to start off by saying I love the idea that they have with freezing his ability timers while this is active. It's super unique and I love it, but I don't think it's going to be enough to really help this ability. This ability kind of still feels a little cluttered, a little bit of a mess, and I want to try and fix that. Now, for the way I think this ability should work, I think it's probably just best that I just describe how and why it does what it does. So, Xaku creates this aura that's so powerful that his broken pieces just can't hold on together. So, he's got this aura and all these parts just go flying off into the distance. So now he's in his skeletal form. Pretend he's in his skeletal form, please. And he has a passive 75% dodge chance. And again, with the way that I wanted to rework his passive, it's more of a 75% chance to just negate an instance of damage. Not perfect, but I think it'd be better than just dodge chance. So now he has this aura that when enemies walk near it, they will become weak to void damage. It's always following him. It's not just the first few enemies that he hits with his ability. It's an aura that's constantly following him. Now, because this aura is so strong that it just bursted off all of his armor, his armor is now just lying around on the field. So you now have like these little areas of just void energy with his body parts just laying in the middle of him. So now he can go around, pick up these parts, and for each part, he will lose the damage negation and gain damage reduction up to 95% damage reduction. I think this would be a nice way to give him some more survivability without just straight up giving him the damage reduction. You have to actually go around and work for it. And it also kind of makes sense in a way that's like the reason why these parts would give him damage reduction is because they've been like almost like supercharged with this big void energy that blew them all off. And within all of these little zones that he could pick up his parts, what I think would be really neat is if, like, in this area, he had all the red pieces of his body just lying in there. And then in this other part, he had all the white pieces just laying around. And then in this other one, he had the black pieces. And then let's say in a different one, he has a cool cape, Syandana, whatever. And then in this one, he has armor pieces. And what would be awesome is if, as he picks these up, they slowly add to his body. I know that they animated him and rigged him in such a way that all the parts are separate and can be animated separately. But I'm not 100% sure if they would be able to do this, to kind of mix and match the parts as you collect these zones. It'd be cool if they could, wouldn't be upset if they didn't, but I think this would be a great way to kind of make the Vast Untime feel a little bit more like what it does, if that makes any sense, but actually give players a better option for survivability other than hoping that if they get hit, that they don't die, you know? So with all these changes together, I think Xaku could potentially be a very strong Warframe. Yeah, there's some buffs that would put him into a debuffer role that I was aiming for, such as Zata's Whisper and Void damage altogether, allowing headshots more easily, with the Lost just being a debuff machine with tons of armor strip and tons of lifting status and tons of damage. And then the Vast Untime also being an easier way to weaken enemies to void damage with having an aura follow you. Plus, all the other buffs I gave, such as Grasp of Loke having more range, Vast Untime being able to give you damage reduction, heck, even the passive just being a little bit better passive. All of these together, I think, could make Xaku a very strong Warframe. I wouldn't be surprised if they'd even have to tweak and nerf him if they were to implement all these changes. But I wouldn't be surprised if these don't get implemented. These are simply my suggestions. These are what I would like to see, and hopefully someone at DE can see these, think they might work and be cool ideas, and implement them in some form. But for now, this is all I'm going to leave it at. Thanks everyone for watching, and goodbye everybody.